is Ejiro Efere. You're welcome to biology class. The theme for this lesson is organism at work. And the topic we'll be looking at today is transport system part 2. In the first part of this lesson, we learned that different substances are moved about in the bodies of living organisms, and the system that is responsible for transporting these substances from one place to the other within the bodies of living organisms is known as transport systems. We also learned that in the bodies of small unicellular organisms, such as amoeba and paramecium, diffusion is an efficient means of transport. But where large and complex organisms are concerned, that's organisms such as plants and animals, diffusion alone is not an efficient means of transport. For such organisms, they use the mass flow transport system. In that same lesson, we also looked at the various materials that are transported within the bodies of living organisms, and we looked at the media used for transporting those materials. In this lesson, we are going to be talking about the structures that are involved in the transport system of plants and animals. We are also going to look at the transport system of animals. At the end of this lesson, you should be able to describe the structure of arteries, veins, capillaries, and vascular bundles. You should also be able to describe the circulatory system in animals. And lastly, you should be able to compare and contrast the differences between open and closed circulatory system and single and double closed circulatory system. Now let's begin. As life evolved from simple to more complex organisms, that is from simple unicellular organisms to simple multicellular organisms, to more complex multicellular organisms such as plants and animals, the mechanism of transportation also improved. That is, higher animals and higher plants developed a better system of transport than the lower plants or animals. This mechanism improved amongst different phyla of animals and different divisions of plants. There are also several structures that are involved in the transport systems of both plants and animals. These structures are called blood vessels in animals. As you can see, several blood vessels in animals, and vascular bundles in plants. If you look closely at this plant, you can see a diagram showing the direction of vascular bundles. At this point, we'll be looking at the different transport structures in the bodies of both plants and animals. We mentioned earlier that for plants, they are called vascular bundles. And there are two types of vascular bundles in plants. They are xylem tissues and phloem tissues. For animals, they are called blood vessels. Three types of blood vessels in animals are arteries, veins, and capillaries. Now let's take them one after the other. The first group are the vascular bundles. The vascular bundles are a longitudinal strand of tubes. I will say it's like a long band of tubes. You can think of the vascular bundles like a water hose. You know, a water hose you use in connecting or sending water to different parts of an area. So think of the vascular bundles as water hose, long tube transferring or transporting fluid from one place to the other, from one part to the other of plants. Vascular bundles transport food, water, and other materials to various parts of plants. We said vascular bundles are of two types, and they are the xylem and phloem tissues. These tissues are also called vascular tissues. Vascular bundles are not found in every plant. they are only found in higher plants. Higher plants are also called vascular plants. These are plants that fall into the group of the pteridophyta and the spermatophyta. They are plants that have vascular bundles. Plants that fall into the group of the thallophyte and the bryophyte do not have vascular tissues. For such plants, they move substances within their bodies through diffusion. These vascular bundles extend through the entire length of a plant, from the root or from the stem down to the different branches, leaves, and you could see the movement of vascular bundles on this leaf. Circulate all around, giving out branches in order to transport substances within the tissue of the leaf. The xylem tissue. Xylem tissue is the first type of vascular bundle. It conducts mainly mineral salts and water. It could carry some other materials, but it conducts mainly mineral salts and water. And it conducts these from the roots of plants, and it takes them to the stems and leaves where these items are required. Don't forget, the roots also use mineral salt and water. So the xylem tissue transports mineral salt and water all over the plant. Xylem tissue is made up of trachate cells and vessel cells. It also has some other types of cell, such as the parenchyma cells and the fiber cells. But for this lesson, we'll be paying attention to the trachate cells and the vessel cells. The trachate cells. These are long spindle-shaped cells that extend along the entire length of plants. They are part of the xylem tissue. They form a vertical column along the length of stems. You could see the trachate. If you look closely, you could see the hole showing that it's like a tube through which fluid can pass. It extends, like I said, through the entire length of stems, leaves, or even roots. Trachate cells carry water or mineral elements. The second types of cells are the vessel cells. The vessel cells. You could also see them in the xylem tissue. The vessel cells have a wider opening. The vessel cells also carry mineral salts and water. If you look at this live stem, this is a stem from a living plant. You look closely, you may not see them as wide as it is here, but if you look closely, most times if you squeeze a stem like this, you will discover that water comes out of the stem. That's because the water molecules are inside the trachate and the vessel cells, which makes up the xylem tissue. Xylem tissue also can be seen in this microscopic diagram where the cells are arranged in a particular order. In xylem tissues, the mature trachate and vessel cells are non-living. This means that from the early stage of trachate and vessel cells, they are living cells. They grow to a point where they die off and become non-living. These non-living trachate and vessel cells make up the woody parts of plants. They make up the woody parts of plants that we always see. The second type of vascular tissues are the phloem tissues. Phloem tissues conduct manufactured food. By manufactured food, we mean carbohydrates. Remember, the product of photosynthesis is carbohydrate or simple sugars. So it conducts sugar manufactured from the leaves of plants to the rest of the plants. It conducts the manufactured sugar to the stems and to the roots, to the leaves, to other parts of plants where they will be used for generation of energy. Phloem tissue is also unique. It also has different types of cells in it. These cells are the sieve tube cells and the companion cells. Like the xylem tissue, the phloem tissue also has the parenchyma cells and the fiber cells. But for the purpose of this lesson, we're paying attention to these two types of cells, the sieve tube cells and companion cells. If you look closely, This is a stem, and we can see the phloem tissue. It's also like the xylem tissue cut from the stem of a plant. Now let's look at the sieve tube cells. In a strand of phloem tissues, you can see the sieve tube. It's made up of several cells. Then you can see the nucleus of the companion. This is the nucleus of the companion cells. Now, what does the sieve tube cells do? They help to transport this manufactured food, that is the sugar, from the leaves to other parts of the plants. The companion cells, as their name implies, accompany the sieve tube cells in carrying out this function. The sieve tube cells are made up of longitudinal cells known as sieve tube elements. They are arranged in long rows down the length of a stem or a leaf. They have openings through which their substances, that is the fluid they carry, can pass through. The companion cells, as I said earlier, just accompanies the sieve tube cells. The phloem tissues and the xylem tissues make up the vascular tissues. Now let's look at the structure of transportation in animals. We say they are called blood vessels, and they include arteries, veins, and capillaries. You could see them, the blood vessels in animals. Let's take a look at the first group, which are the arteries. Arteries are, just like I mentioned for the vascular tissues, they are like long hoses which transport fluid all over the bodies of animals. And the fluid they transport is called blood in most animals. Arteries receive blood directly from the heart. In most animals, arteries receive oxygenated blood. In fact, in vertebrates, arteries carry oxygenated blood directly from the heart. Now let's take a look at the structure of arteries. Arteries, because they carry oxygenated blood directly from the heart, they have a very thick muscular walls. To see the walls of artery, it is thick, very thick. This is because the blood that comes out from the heart, the blood that the heart usually pumps out, comes out in a very high pressure. So the walls of arteries are thick and elastic in order to expand and withstand the high pressure of blood that comes out from the heart. Arteries give out smaller branches known as arterioles. If you take a look at this diagram, the vessels colored with red are the arteries. This is a major artery. This is an artery, and I said it gives out smaller branches known as arterioles. So this smaller branch is an arteriole. Smaller arteries are called arterioles. You can also see arteries here colored in red. They are colored in red because they transport oxygenated blood directly from the heart. Don't forget, the blood that comes from the heart is usually in high pressure. The second type of blood vessels in animals are veins. Veins function like arteries, but unlike arteries, the veins carry blood back to the heart. Unlike arteries, carry blood from the heart. Veins carry de-oxygenated blood, and this blood is usually at low pressure. Vein carry blood from the cells, tissues, and organs of the bodies of animals to the heart. So usually, the oxygen in this blood must have been used up by the cells and the tissues. And because the oxygen has been used up, the blood is usually at a low pressure. Veins have thin walls. Their walls are not as thick as that of arteries, but the thin walls, as well as the walls of arteries, expand. They expand to help them hold the large volume of blood when the body is at rest. Veins also carry blood in large volume, although at low pressure. So the walls are thick in order for the veins to expand to hold the large volume of blood. If you look at this diagram, the veins are colored in blue. They are colored in blue because they carry deoxygenated blood. By deoxygenated blood, it means the oxygen has been removed from the blood. You could see the vessels in blue are the veins. They travel alongside with the arteries. All veins have valves. These valves are like structures that block the movement of blood. The valves help the veins to carry blood in a forward direction. Remember, the blood is coming from tissues to the heart. So with the valves, the blood flows only towards the heart. It prevents the backflow of blood. That is, blood cannot flow backwards. This is because the veins do not have high pressure like arteries. So the blood just has to flow in a forward direction towards the heart. And to achieve this, the valves, these are the valves. You could also see valves here. The valves have to ensure that blood flows only towards the forward direction and not backwards. Like we saw in arteries, smaller veins are called venules. This is a smaller vein. It is a venule. If you look closely at these ones, these smaller veins here, this is a big vein. This is a big vein. The smaller ones are called venules. This is a vein. Then this is a venule, like we saw in arteries. If you look at this diagram, all of these are veins. The arteries have been removed. You can see all on blue, the vessels on blue are veins. The third group of blood vessels are the capillaries. Capillaries are very unique sets of blood vessels. They are somewhat between arteries and veins. Wherever you see arteries and veins, you will see capillaries. Capillaries are the most numerous blood vessels in the body of animals. They have thin walls. They have very, very thin walls. And this is because capillaries are tiny vessels. They are usually tiny. You can see capillaries. I say they are between veins and arteries. You can see capillaries, tiny vessels. These are also capillaries. These are capillaries between veins and arteries. Capillaries, they are very thin, therefore they have thin walls. Capillaries carry both oxygenated blood and de-oxygenated blood. Can you tell me why this is so? I'm sure you would have known by now that because they are between arteries and veins, arteries carry oxygenated blood and veins carry deoxygenated blood. So capillaries should carry oxygenated blood at one end, oxygenated blood at this end, you can see this end. Then they carry deoxygenated blood at the other end. So the end where they carry oxygenated blood is called the arterial end, and the end where they carry deoxygenated blood is called the venous end. Capillaries also have a large surface area to volume ratio. Remember, in the first part of this lesson, we said structures that have a large surface area to volume ratio will be able to carry out diffusion efficiently. So in capillaries, diffusion is efficiently carried out. This large surface area to volume ratio is very good for the exchange of materials between the blood in the capillaries and the tissues in the body of animals. Capillaries link arterioles with venules. I've said this earlier. Arterioles are smaller arteries, while venules are smaller veins. In between arterioles and venules, you have capillaries. As we mentioned earlier too, the blood at the arterial end of capillaries is at high pressure, and the blood at the venous end of capillaries is at low pressure. Capillaries go deep into organs and tissues. You see, this is the lung organ. I'll just have to do the drawing. This is the lung. The lung is an organ. There are other organs and tissues in the bodies of animals. Capillaries go into the tissues and they go in between the cells of the organs and tissues. They are that tiny. They can go in between cells of organs and tissues in order to exchange substances from the blood to the cells. So with capillaries, the blood gets very close to the cells of tissues. Substances that are useful in the blood diffuse out of the blood into the cells, and waste materials that are in the cells diffuse out of the cells into the blood via the thin walls of capillaries. And with this mechanism, blood is transported through the various parts of the bodies of animals. Having looked at the various structures involved in the transport system of plants and animals, I would like us to look at the transport system in animals. Simple multicellular animals such as flatworms and cnidarians. These cnidarians include organisms such as the sponge, sea anemone, jellyfish, hydra. These simple multicellular organisms make use of diffusion. They make use of simple diffusion as a means of transport. And this is because such organisms have a large surface area to volume ratio. We said earlier that for such organisms, diffusion is a very efficient means of transport. But for large organisms, for large and complex organisms, such as plants and most animals, their bodies are so big, they have a small surface area to volume ratio. We said in such organisms, diffusion is not efficient. Therefore, they use the mass flow transport system. The first, or rather, the simplest group of organisms to use the mass flow transport system are the annelids. That's organisms that fall in the phylum Annelidia. They include earthworms and segmented worms. The mass flow transport system, as we said, is a system of transport whereby fluid carries various substances all over the bodies of organisms. Mass flow transport system in animals is also known as circulatory system. Circulatory system, mass flow transport system in animals. The circulatory system of animals has certain components. These components are a pumping device, which is the heart, a device that helps to pump the fluid, a circulating fluid, which is the blood in most animals, and a system of tubes and vessels, which are the blood vessels we have looked at. All of these three components make up the circulatory system of animals. You could see the pumping device, the heart. Of course, the heart pumps a fluid through the network of tubes and vessels. There are two types of circulatory systems in animals. The first one is open circulatory system, and the other is closed circulatory system. We are going to look at these types of circulatory systems one after the other. The first, open circulatory system. This is a method of circulation whereby the heart pumps blood. Remember, the heart is a pumping device. The blood flows through a vessel into open spaces in the bodies of animals. These open spaces are also called cavities. Open spaces or body cavities. Open circulatory system is commonly found in organisms such as insects, mollusks. Mollusks are organisms such as snails, roundworms. All of these organisms have an open circulatory system. I said earlier that the cavities are called hemocoel. If you take a look at this diagram, it shows the open circulatory system of insects. You could see this is the heart that forms a long tube. This is the blood vessels through which the blood pumps out and opens into the hemocoel. This is the hemocoel, which is the open space. You could also see that here. This is the heart. This is the blood vessel. It opens into the hemocoel, which are the cavities in the body. In open circulatory system, because the blood opens into empty spaces in the body called hemocoel, this blood covers the tissues and organs in the bodies of these organisms. It is like You pour a large quantity of water into a bowl and you dip your finger into the bowl. The water covers your finger. That is how the organs and tissues in the bodies of these organisms are submerged in the blood of these organisms. Because the blood does not pass through so many channels. It just opens into spaces in the bodies of the organisms. The organs and the tissues are just submerged in the blood. By these mechanisms, substances simply diffuse out of the blood into the cells, and of course, substances will diffuse out of the cells of this tissue into the blood. It's more like a very simple type of circulation. Blood opens into empty spaces, organs are submerged in the blood, substances diffuse into the cells of the organs, and substances diffuse out of the cells of the organs into the blood. Blood from the open spaces, that's the hemocoel, flows back into the heart after the entire circulation. Blood from these empty spaces, which are the hemocoel, flows back into the heart through another kind or a different group of vessels known as ostia. So through the ostia, blood from the hemocoel flows back into the heart, and of course, the heart pumps it out again into the hemocoel. That is that for open circulatory system. Now let's look at closed circulatory system. This is a method of circulation whereby the heart pumps blood. This blood is pumped into a network of vessels, and the vessels transport this blood to the various cells and tissues of the body. So in closed circulatory system, the blood is entirely enclosed within blood vessels. It is not opened into hemocoels or cavities or empty spaces. Closed circulatory system is commonly found in higher animals, and the least animals to have are the fishes. You could see the blood does not open into any empty space. It is pumped from the heart. It flows through vessels, enclosed in vessels, and it goes round the bodies of organisms. You could also see enclosed in vessels. It goes round the bodies of animals. In closed circulatory system, blood leaves the heart through the arteries. As we mentioned earlier, the arteries give out smaller branches known as arterioles. These arterioles penetrate organs. They penetrate different organs in the body. And at the organs, the arterioles divide further to become capillaries. You could see blood. Blood leaves the heart through arteries. The arteries get to organs. They divide into smaller versions known as arterioles. Arterioles get into the organs and they give off smaller branches known as capillaries. We mentioned earlier that substances from the blood carried by the capillaries simply diffuse through the walls of the capillaries into cells. And of course, substances from the cells that need to leave the cell simply diffuse out of the cells into the capillaries. So the entire system of a closed circulatory system is closed. Blood does not flow into empty cavities. Blood does not flow into hemocoel. At the end of each circulation, blood also returns to the heart. That is, de-oxygenated blood that has been used by the tissues and organs returns to the heart. And in order for blood to return to the heart, the capillaries unite to form venules. Remember, we said venules are smaller veins. The venules unite further to form veins. And we mentioned that veins carry de-oxygenated blood from the tissues and organs back to the heart. So I hope you will not forget these illustrations. Arteries become arterioles, arterioles become capillaries, capillaries become venules, venules become veins, and the veins carry the oxygenated blood to the heart. There are two types of closed circulatory system. They are single closed circulatory system and double closed circulatory system. Let's find out what this is all about. The first are the single closed circulatory system. This is simply a pattern of circulation whereby blood passes through the heart once. The emphasis here is once. It passes through the heart once. For each time, it makes a round trip through the body. What this means is that the heart always pumps blood. The heart pumps blood through the body continuously. And the mechanism is this. The oxygenated blood enters the heart gets the blood mixed up with oxygen and circulates it all over the body. Single closed circulatory system is commonly found in fishes. And the mechanism of this transport system is that deoxygenated blood enters the heart. The heart transports the deoxygenated blood first to the gills. Remember that the gills are the organs of respiration in fishes. So at the gills, the arteries give off arterioles, which gives off capillaries. Capillaries go in between the cells of the gills. Oxygen from the fluid in the gills enters the blood. The blood becomes oxygenated. So oxygenated blood from the gills flows through arteries down to digestive system, somewhere around here. At the digestive system, the arteries give off arterioles again. Arterioles become capillaries, mixes up or enters in between the cells of the digestive tract, absorbs or receives digested food substances, and the blood becomes rich in digested food substances. So the blood again begins to flow through a network of arteries. At this point, the blood that is flowing is rich in digested food substance and it is oxygenated. From this point, the blood circulates all over the bodies of fishes. It gets to the tissues and organs. The tissues and organs use up the food nutrients and the oxygen. Then the blood returns to the heart through veins. It returns to the heart for another cycle of circulation. So we say blood passes through the heart just once. Each time it makes a round trip through the body. The second type of closed circulatory system is called double closed circulatory system. It is a pattern of circulation whereby blood passes through the heart twice, I'd like you to take note, before making a round trip through the body. Now let's see how this works. This double closed circulatory system is commonly found in the bodies of organisms such as amphibians, mammals, reptiles, and aves. This means that for each trip of circulation, that is each time the heart needs to pump blood, oxygenated blood from the tissues and organs gets into the heart, and the oxygenated blood from the heart flows to the lungs. Remember, the lungs are organs of respiration in terrestrial animals. At the lungs, capillaries goes in between the cells of the lungs, receives oxygen, and the oxygenated blood returns to the heart through a network of arteries. It returns to the heart. So this is the second time the same volume of blood is entering the heart. The oxygenated blood gets to the heart, and the heart pumps this oxygenated blood through another network of arteries to the various parts of the body. This is a double closed circulatory system because that blood entered the heart twice. Remember, it came from the tissues and organs into the heart as deoxygenated blood. It moved or flowed towards the lungs. It received oxygen from the lungs and came back to the heart as oxygenated blood. And after the oxygenated blood returned to the heart, the blood was eventually pumped from the heart to the various tissues and organs of the body. And because blood enters the heart twice, we call that a double closed circulatory system. At this point of our lesson, I'd like us to do a quick summary of all we've learned in this lesson. First, we said the structure of transport in plants are called vascular bundles. It is the xylem and phloem tissues. And those of animals are called blood vessels. That is arteries, veins, and capillaries. We also said the circulatory system of animals consists of the heart, blood vessels, and a circulating fluid, which is usually the blood. We said there are two types of circulatory system in animals, and they are open and closed circulatory system. Lastly, we said closed circulatory system is single, that is single closed circulatory system if blood passes through the heart once. Each time it makes a round trip through the body, and it is called double closed circulatory system if blood passes through the heart twice. Each time it makes a round trip through the body. To find out how well you have learned from this lesson, I would like you to take this question. The blood vessels that transport oxygenated blood at one end and de-oxygenated blood at the other end are called A. Arterioles, B. Veins, C. Capillaries, and D. Hemocoel. The correct answer is C. Capillaries. They transport both oxygenated blood and de-oxygenated blood. We have come to the end of this lesson. I hope you learned a lot. You understand the differences between arteries, veins, and capillaries. You know the uses or the functions of xylem and phloem tissues, and you can explain the mechanism in open and closed circulatory system. I hope to have you in our next class. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.